And so tonight's reading, we meet a people who have come together in the name of the Lord. Tonight, we are a people in the middle of Holy Week who have come together in the name of the Lord. The people of Israel are on a journey, and so are we. A hard and difficult journey that we take individually and as a people, as our fellowship churches and as churches together, as we identify with Jesus and allow him to change our lives. Tonight is a night to reflect on where we are on the journey. Tonight we meet as a people whose lives have been changed by a global pandemic, by loss of those we love, by lockdown, by a lack of freedom over the last 2 years. And if we thought we had suffered a lack of freedom, we also meet tonight as people whose hearts have been broken by the appalling crimes against humanity in the Ukraine. So tonight, we look to another military conflict from many years ago to find hope, love and reconciliation as we continue our journey this week to Good Friday and then in hope to Easter Sunday. And so the background of the reading I've read to you is that one of the most catastrophic military losses in Israel's history has occurred. The Philistines capture the Ark of the Covenant. 20 years later, the Israelites engage the Philistines in another significant battle. But it's not like the first battle. This battle, they choose to rely on God instead of themselves. The nation acts by consulting God. And this time, unlike the defeat 20 years ago, they are rewarded with an improbable and yet miraculous victory. A special triumph. It marks the first time in the nation's history that they have ever defeated the Philistines. And then we read, Samuel took a stone and he set it up and it named it Ebenezer, saying, thus far the Lord has helped me. Tonight I want to focus on the memorial stone. I have done a service similar to this. It was 2016 for those of you with a really long memory. And tonight I wanted to revisit the Ebenezer stone after the 2 years where we haven't been able to meet like this, where we have to look forward in a new way as churches together and see what that stone might mean to us all individually and as a group of churches as we journey with Christ. And so as I do, I want to offer you 3 observations. Firstly, when Samuel raises the stone, it is commemorative. Samuel is Israel's last judge and its first prophet and leader, commemorating the occasion of victory given to them by erecting a monument which he names Ebenezer. Israel now has a new religious symbol. Samuel seeks to keep the memory of God's deliverance current in Israel's mind. He wanted Israel to remember the past and be thankful for what God had done for them then, because he knew that when we look back to God's help in the past, it encourages and gives us hope and sustains us in tough times that are ahead, or even that we're going through now. Now, after 2 years of coronavirus pandemic and an unpredictable war raging in the Ukraine of the likes we never thought we'd see again, it is right for us all to look to God's faithfulness to us personally in the past as our hope for the future. To look at God's faithfulness to us as nations, as churches, as the people of Christ, as we point our way to an uncertain future with lower church attendances, with questions over the future of churches throughout the land, with problems with finances. God has helped us thus far. He is not in the business of leaving us now. Christians have long taken hope in the name Ebenezer. Hudson Taylor, the founder of the China Inland Mission, displayed in every mission outpost he set up a plaque which read, Ebenezer, Jehovah Jireh. The Lord has helped us to this point, and we will see it from now on. The name was famously adapted by Christian churches, and I don't need to tell a large number of you that are here tonight where the nearest one is. The Ebenezer Independent Methodist Church of New Silksworth. Not too far from here. When we go in on Friday, those of us who don't normally walk through the doors of the IMs on a regular basis, look up at the door on the way into the chapel, and you'll see it written there. The name Ebenezer affirms that the Israelites' upset was a result of divine assistance, not human strength. The stone's name gives God rightful credit. And so firstly, the raising of that stone was commemorative. Secondly, the raising of the stone is instructive. Samuel is reminding Israel that the recent victory is just the latest in a long line of God's mighty acts of redemption. A long chain of mercies. The people of God exist in blessing, says Samuel. Samuel aims for people to remember what God has done till now, so that in the future they will always appeal to him. Samuel reminds them that their future success as a nation is dependent on their willingness to rely on God and not themselves. That is why the Ebenezer stone is erected. When most people hear the name Ebenezer, of course, they don't think of Samuel or even New Silksworth Independent Methodist Church. I think they think of a Christmas carol. Ebenezer Scrooge. Why do you think Dickens called him Ebenezer anyway? Because he is a man redeemed and reconciled. Taking that biblical name Ebenezer and using it in a powerful way. The Dickensian equivalent of breaking an Ebenezer stone. Samuel's institution of the Ebenezer stone sets a strong example for each of us to establish a spiritual marker in our own lives, or several. Those many memorials that stand as monuments to the faithfulness of God in your life. When the nagging doubts then try to trouble your mind or convince you that God's left you, or he's not there, or he's not going to come through this time, revisit the monuments, the moments when he was so powerfully present. These are your Ebenezers and mine. We raise them and we quietly must register that thus far he has helped us. The promised land that had been slowly eroded through generations of willfulness and forgetfulness was recovered when Samuel preached God's word and administered his law. The enemies to the west, the Philistines, and the enemies to the east, the Amorites, were put in their place. And raising the Ebenezer stone was a moment of recognition. It marks the place and time in Samuel's leadership of Israel, when all was in harmony, instructing us that God is always near. And so firstly, the raising of that stone was commemorative. Secondly, the raising of the stone is instructive. And thirdly, the raising of the stone is redemptive. Samuel creates Ebenezer so the Israelites have a constant reminder of God's activity in the world and their lives. Every time the children of Israel look at that rock, it reminds them that God has been faithful before and he will be faithful again, no matter what danger or trial they might face. We too need to be reminded of God's grace in our lives. In our humanity, we tend to forget how good God has been to us. We must always remember that God takes us by the hand and he leads us through violent rivers and dark paths. Unfortunately, I struggle to find any evidence that the Israelites built upon Ebenezer, which is the last of only 3 occurrences of the name in the Bible. The euphoria of the victory doesn't last long, for soon the Israelites are demanding a king. There are no further Bible stories set at Ebenezer, and there are no tales of heroes drawing inspiration from the landmarks. But as we journey through this Holy Week with Christ, we still need to take note of those moments when God was good and near. As we reflect on the pandemic and the Ukraine, we must return to those moments when we can say, thus far, the Lord has helped us. Not just as a memory, not just as a hope, but a recognition that we are redeemed by these moments, and we will continue to be redeemed. And what about our churches? Well, we too are set up as stones of help. You see, the Ebenezer stone was set up for all to see, so that all would know God was present, and God will continue to be present. And we as churches must be stones of help, stones of hope, that people know, so people know that God is here, in Silksworth, in Dartford, and beyond. And I don't mean the piles of stones we worship in. Whatever they look like, whatever colour the bricks are, and however full they are, and however expensive they are to heat. I mean the piles of living stones that we are as God's people in churches together. Our individual stones, as individuals and as individual churches, then make one big stone. If you, like me, have spent any time walking the hills, you will see cairns, piles of stones left as waymarkers for those who are lost when the weather comes in bad. We live in a world of lost people, more than ever, my experience tells me after the last 2 years. In my hill walking and climbing days, I always added a stone to the cairn I passed, for I never knew when I might need one, when I might be lost on one of the England or Wales' mountains. If we are truly together as individual churches and churches together, we can be the waymarker. We can add the extra stones for the reconciliation of all. And so on the table by my side is our cairn of hope, our waymarker. But where is it placed? It's at the foot of the cross. For we are the people of Jesus Christ. And so our memorial that God has helped us thus far moves from the Ebenezer to the cross on which Jesus died. And the cross which we will remember on Sunday morning is an empty cross, because the tomb was empty too. As individuals and churches, we move on in hope that with God's help, that we're making it thus far and we'll make it some more. Let's be an Ebenezer stone, individually, as individual churches and as churches together. Because I think this community needs us together, united, more than it ever did. The raising of the stone is commemorative, instructive and redemptive. And in a moment of silence, shortly, I will invite you to come and take your part of our cairn that I built on our table here. The rock that is his church in this place that we call Silksworth. Made up of such diverse and such very special stones, each one unique, each individual as individuals and as denominations, but most importantly now together, pointing in our own broken ways to his amazing truth. And after that, we're going to sing, and I'm going to introduce the next hymn. And I want you to hold your stone, that stone that represents your own individual and corporate Ebenezer, remembering what God has done for you. The second verse of Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing says, Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when I was a stranger